Live?
We're live now, sir. I was rearing and ready.
Okay. Welcome everybody and evening to Port Royal February 3rd Council Workshop. Thank you for joining us tonight. And we'll go ahead and get started. Our first order of business tonight is we have a mid-year budget update. Van and Chris, thank you both. Who's ever going to start the process?
I'm just going to introduce Chris Canada, who is our finance director. He's going to speak to y'all regarding the midterm or mid-fiscal year report, and then if there are any questions, he or I will answer them.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
All right, thanks for having me. I know Van sent y'all a summarization financial report that y'all have, and there are some comments there that I wanted to make on that. Made a few adjustments to that today based on what you originally got. As far as overall total revenues, based on this time last year, we are right in line with where we were last year. So I know there's that concern of the property tax revenue being delayed coming in because the bills are going out later. But like I said, we are right in line with our revenues into January this year as where we were January last year. We are looking to, excuse me, like I said, so that is the revenue portion of it. Now, as far as the property taxes, we used to get historically our biggest distributions were from collections made January 1 to January 15th, and then from January 15th through January 31st, because the bills were due January 15th. We've gotten kind of a big distribution up front because they still got all the collections from those homeowners who pay their property taxes through escrow and their mortgage companies. But because the bills aren't due now until March 31, if it holds like it did when the bills were due January 15th, we're not looking to get possibly another bigger distribution until that in April sometime, which would, be that 315 to 331 collections and 41 to 415 collections. As far as expenses, last year to this year, they're up slightly, about 8.46%. And as I said in the report there, and that's basically mainly due to the recent Cypress Wetlands Restoration Project. If it wasn't for that, those expenses would be right in line as well. Another issue, and I know y'all have talked about this a lot, is that the dock's still losing money down there. Revenues are half of what they were this time last year. Expenses have gone down some, but the gap has grown pretty big. And a lot of that this year in particular is due to having to pay rent for the facility over there. And as far as our bank balances and stuff, I took a look at those compared last year to this year, and once again, we're right in line. So I think considering everything that's going on, that we're in pretty good shape. Does anybody have any questions on any of that?
Council, questions?
No, I just need to kind of digest this a little bit. I think I just got this. I haven't had a chance to really look at it good. The dock always seems to be that. We just got to figure that out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean,
I was going to ask about that when he's about yes. What are the numbers on that?
Year to date, the revenues are right at 97K, and your expenses are 203,000.
106,000 roughly.
Yeah, Yeah, so it's a pretty significant difference.
What is that over last year's? If I mean, does the gap continue to broaden each year? I mean, are we losing?
Well, you never paid rent before.
Yeah,
Now we're paying rent.
I mean, the big thing is that, like I said, it's just that rent piece, because that was like $65,000, I believe, that we've had to fork out so far for rent to maintain and keep that facility going over there.
That's the processing plant, right, Van?
Yes, sir.
I think it's a conversation we're going to have again as council. I think it's an important conversation during our retreat this year. We're going to have to decide what we want to do with that. We've said that we're going to support it, but that 106K at midpoint, that's a tough one. Chris, do you have any way to project out, you think, what it's going to be towards the end, or is it linear from here, do you think?
That's something I can definitely sit down and take a look at and get back to you on, as far as how I think that's going to play out.
I think that would be important for us during the during our annual retreat. Excuse me, I think I said workshop a minute ago, but during our annual retreat to really have a solid conversation on that. And to go back to one of your earlier statements, I didn't realize that, and I just want to make sure I understood that. So banks that had taxes in escrow paid whether the bills were released or not, is what you made it sound like. Is that the way that occurred? Why that first one was still?
I think so. Yeah, I think, and Van can probably talk on this some too. Is that I know from my personal experience, my own. Yes, my mortgage company paid out of escrow, and then later I ended up getting a bill from the county that was a little bit less than what was paid out. So basically, and then the county on their end is going to have to go back and do some refunding eventually.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Can I ask real quick, just to refresh me, what was the total cost of the Cypress Wetlands restoration project?
It was, let me 1 second here.
I think that'd be interesting just for people to know, for the town to know how much.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Looking at the revenue. It was $428,400.
Okay. Just my last question would be under the concern section of your memo, which is great. It really breaks it down in a very digestible way. That the necessity for the professional fees. If you could just speak a little more on that, exactly
because we've had a significant increase in involvement from a legal perspective due to the default letter and the follow-up, plus evaluating the TIF and considering, the associated engineering and architecture that goes along with evaluating that project.
Gotcha.
And just to circle back on the dock real quick, there are two things that are going to impact how it finishes financially. One is kind of unpredictable. It really depends on how much product we move across the dock. The second is we don't sell fuel anymore. So that is a source of revenue that no longer exists. So I can only predict that our financial position will worsen on operation of the dock.
How's rent? How's us collecting rent? How's that going?
We don't collect it, we pay it.
We collect it from the boaters down there, Van. That's
$300 a boat. Yeah, that's not doing much for you.
Yeah.
So we're collecting. Okay, let me rephrase this. I'm sorry. What type of success are we seeing from the boats that are at our dock? What are they all paying? Is everybody at that dock paying?
No.
Okay. And how many boats do we have down there, and how many are paying?
I'd have to double check with Joey, but we're paying about $4,000 a month in you're netting out on your rent probably half of that.
That was going to be my question, because I was looking at the mid-year financial statement, and I saw that we spent about 35.9, and our fiscal year starts July 1, so that's 7 months. So we're roughly about a little over $5,000 a month of expenses for the seafood processing down there.
No, it'd be worse than that.
No. Yeah, no. We've the expenses year to date on that are like 200,000.
From July, okay.
Yes, from July, expenses are like about 203,000. So you look at that as far as, you
So
know,
what
you
is the
divide
monthly?
that by
What are we
7.
paying monthly? What are we paying monthly for that property?
4,000 in rent.
Okay. Okay, I agree with Joel's, with Mayor also. We definitely have to have another discussion. We can't continue to go year after year, eating all this cost out of there.
Mhm. Especially with us still, and I know that the dock fees for the boats being there, it's an issue that we really have no answer to, because even if they don't pay the rent, we can't do anything about the boats. Van has explained that to us in extreme detail, that basically once the boat is tied to your dock, you own the boat. We can't abandon the boat. We can't destroy the boat. We can't remove the boat from our dock. So even if somebody doesn't pay, we get into a tough situation there, and it's just something we're going to have to wrestle with. We're going to have to wrestle with it this year, because we can't keep at this expense rate, obviously, as we all
We've
know.
been wrestling with it for over 4 years now.
Yep.
Longer.
All right. Council member, any other questions to Van or Chris about where we are?
Thank you very much, Chris.
All right, thank you.
Chris, I
Thanks,
do have one question. Is there a way, as you're doing things and looking at reporting capability, is there a way we can take our statements to almost a statement of activity, where it has our revenue and our expenditures kind of on one sheet, so we don't have to go back and forth between the two? Is it just take a look at
Yeah, I definitely, these reports that you get, I can download them to Excel, and then probably mash them together for you if you prefer that going forward.
Council, please speak up here, but I think like a statement of activity, kind of where you can see the revenues, the expenditures, the budget, and where we are all on one sheet. Because I don't know if everybody does like I do, but you end up trying to match them up.
It can do it. It can be done through Excel, as he said, also just by also creating formulas also where it could feed from one sheet to the next.
Yep. So maybe take a look at that and show us some samples as we go on, or maybe that's something we could start for the next budget year and think about what just makes sense for all of us. You guys do this every day. We do this. We try to do this as much as we can. So.
Okay. Yep. Definitely.
All right. Chris, thank you so much for being here. Council's good?
We're good.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Chris, thanks so much for putting together the mid-year review for us. It really helps us, because we can look back and see where, if we as council also need to say, we've got some accounts that we can spend out of or not spend out of. And that's the idea here as we're getting to this midpoint.
That was great. I really appreciate it.
So our next item in the agenda is our interview of board positions. We currently have 2 positions that we are interviewing for tonight. Am I correct, Brooke?
Yes, sir.
We've got the municipal election and the economic development board. If it's okay with council, we'll hear from Carol Benz first with the municipal election board. Carol, if you'd like to address us and tell us why you're decided to join one of our lovely commissions and boards.
Well, my name is Carol Benz. I've been a resident in Port Royal now for 5 years, and I've always had a strong desire for service and volunteerism. And the reason I want to get involved with the election board is that the the current state of affairs has really made me aware of how important our elections are, how that the integrity of them is maintained, and that good people of good character get involved and don't just let other people do the job. So I am motivated to serve in that capacity, and I really I think I can do a good job. I am very detail oriented. I'm very I'm outgoing. I love new challenges and learning new things.
Thank you. I will open it up to council. Anybody has any questions for Carol?
Tell me again what your background is, Carol.
I am currently, I have a very diverse background. I have a degree in international business. I have worked in insurance with health insurance, property and casualty insurance, life insurance. I've also been a school teacher. I worked in the primary grades in California. I've done a lot of volunteer work in the school district. I've also volunteered at United Way of the Low Country and have been tutoring children pre-COVID, of course, tutoring children in reading in the classroom. I also volunteer at the Beaufort Memorial Hospital. I was working as a Born to Read volunteer, where we encourage young mothers, young families to read. I moved here from Birmingham, Alabama, and we owned a small horse farm. So I have a lot of administrative real life administrative experience running that. It really, a hobby farm is a small business. You have a lot of expenses going out, no income, but it is a labor of love. And then currently, I am a realtor, and I also work in retail. So I've done a lot of things. I have a lot of life experience.
And you're on the Spanish Moss Trail quite often, I believe, right?
I am. My dogs are getting older, so I can no longer walk as much as I used to, but I do love the Spanish Moss Trail.
I see you out there quite often.
Yes.
Any other council members have any questions for Carol?
Just thank you for your interest
Yeah.
and willingness to serve.
Go ahead, Darrell. I'm sorry. I think I cut you off. Go ahead and say it.
I was just saying thank you for your interest and willingness to serve.
We appreciate that. And
It would be my pleasure.
we really appreciate you joining us and allowing us to get to meet you even a little more if we didn't know you. Doing it under this fashion. It is now our second time that we are filling our positions by interviewing them from a work session first. The actual position appointments will be at next week's council meeting is when we will do those. And tonight it's all about us getting to meet you and understand, why you've decided to come forward and ask to sit on one of our commissions. And we thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you for all. Thank you.
The next, sorry, did somebody have something?
No, sir.
The next commission that we have is the Economic Development Review Board, which is a countywide. Van, can you give us a good summary of what that is? Because you sat on that for us for a number of years and really explain, highlight that for us.
Right. It's after several attempts at economic development in the last 10 to 15 years, this latest iteration, which was spearheaded pretty significantly by the current mayor over in Beaufort, Stephen Murray, has done a really good job of bringing all of the various municipalities as well as the county to the table, and some at large seats or people from the private sector that have been doing a pretty good job of creating kind of a cohesive mission statement management model to attract economic development in Beaufort County. They've kind of shifted their gears in terms of recognizing the importance of the environment and conservation and how we proceed with economic development. And as John O'Toole describes it, we're trying to hit a bunch of singles instead of trying to hit home runs. And for the most part, this board, which meets, monthly, gets together and evaluates potential projects and also strategizes over how we should be moving economic development forward in Beaufort County. And, I've participated as the town's representative for probably 18 months now. Previous to that, it was Joe Lee, a former council member. And for the most part, the members are either elected officials or appointed by the respective councils. I'm probably one of the only employees that is a board member at this point. And so with my time expiring and the necessity of a reappointment from Port Royal, we obviously open the floor to take nominations to serve in that capacity.
Thank you, Van, for that summary again on what that board does for Port Royal and really for the Beaufort County as a whole in that aspect. And we'll go ahead and open. Does anybody, council, have any questions for Van before I open it up to the two members?
No, sir.
Okay, very good. We've got two people that have applied and in no particular order other than the way it shows up on my file sheet here. Greg Shelton, if you would like to go ahead first and address council about why you would like to have a seat on that board.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. Many of you already know me from my current role as chairman of Parks and Recreation. I've been a homeowner in Port Royal now for 21 years and a full-time resident now for the last 4. One of the reasons why I found this particular board position to be interesting is that it is in parallel to what my career has been over 35 years in the financial sector, in various positions in different companies. My background, not at all like Carol's, but my background basically was about 15 years in retail, Bloomingdale's, Bergdorf Goodman, J. Crew, Gimbel's when Gimbel's was still up and running in New York. I did that for about 17 years, both on the retail side and on the credit management side, and really got into the consumer and risk management piece of the world when I was at Citibank as vice president. And I kind of advanced, not kind of advanced, but I advanced from an area director, which was about 500 people, to a national director at Citibank with responsibility for a $40 billion credit card portfolio and all the aspects of that portfolio, everything from solicitation of new accounts all the way through the outside relationships that we had with 150 external vendors in the United States, a couple in London and Germany. And those are the folks that basically help us manage portfolio risk as it extended. I was recruited from a city down to Atlanta, where I worked and lived for 25 years, and started as a president of a banking retail division. And ultimately, that company, which was a publicly traded company, extended to insurance, healthcare, medical, banking, and retail. Those were our 4, and government. Those were our 4 major business sectors. I've been on the economic development side of business. I mean, when you think about operationally running a business, whether it's small, large, whether it's a publicly traded company or a small company, there's common parallels to both. And all of that is growing that business, looking at how you utilize the assets of that business, how you spend the capital of that company, and how the assets of that business provide a return both for its shareholders, stakeholders, and employees. And so when this opportunity came up, I thought it was a fairly interesting perspective from my point of view. I mean, I've dealt with mergers and acquisitions over the past 20-something years, completed 37 of those acquisitions and reviewed over 90 companies. If you look at that and how does that apply to what we're talking about here, each of those acquisitions involve looking at how we could grow that company in such a way that it would make sense for the overall good of the business. I looked at the mission statement for the Economic Review Board. and I looked at basically what they said in terms of how they managed their function, organization, structure, and leadership. You don't run a business, as I did with 4,200 employees, unless you had some organizational skills, the ability to structure that organization, and then using leadership, drive that company to the point where it would grow. Over the period of time in Atlanta, I started basically 3 different companies. One of them basically was acquired by a publicly traded company. That's after we grew it to about 4,200 employees. The other one, we basically raised about $100 million in equity from Wall Street. Second one, we raised about $60 million in equity on Wall Street. We executed a number of acquisitions through leverage. I raised a $100 million bond through Standard & Poor's and Moody's. We got it rated BB. Along the way, I kind of got out of the financial side for a while, and I was asked to run a company that was a technology company. And that technology company created the first ever software where the financial community could bring what's called distressed assets to the market through a very efficient methodology. And that was, we basically used the eBay model of selling product. We were selling distressed debt for the top 50 banks in the United States. What that all means is that there was a lot of involvement in terms of developing the requirements for that company, putting together the team. And again, that was an entrepreneurial effort. When I took over that company, I think there might have been about 10 employees. About 8 of them were programmers. And we grew that company through $5 billion in sales over 3 years to become the largest leading brokerage business in the United States for that particular asset class. All of that combined, I think, fits very nicely into what the board is looking for in terms of its vision. Recruit private investment. Obviously, I have done that in numerous times, both private and institutional investment. Create jobs through the development of the mergers and acquisitions that we did. We created thousands of jobs throughout the United States. The company that I ran had 55 locations. We were in 35 states. I had 4,200 people reporting to me. And that entire process not only was creating the jobs that went with that acquisition, but also basically doing it in a very efficient way. Most recently, I worked for LexisNexis, and that's where I left Atlanta from. LexisNexis is a data management company where we were looking at not only the acquisition of data, but how we would use it in such a way to bring it to the financial community so that we could help companies grow, reduce their risk, mitigate the risks by giving them information that they can act on. But my last function there, and I think, again, as far as parallel to what the board does, is we were looking at what the needs of the community were. And our community was the top 100 banks in the United States. My responsibility then as the emerging markets director was not only the US financial community, but globally. So my responsibility at that point was to look at how do we develop our products, our company, to help our clients grow, future growth, and anticipate what would be needed in terms of achieving that type of growth. I think at one point we looked at it was about an $11 trillion responsibility as you look at the global receivable in the United States. So again, I kind of look at where the wants to go with its vision in terms of job opportunity, creating that, diversify the economy, a number of things that they were looking at in terms of working with public officials. I was on the Legislative Action Committee over the last 15, 20 years for the international credit community. And that meant we went to visit the congressmen, the senators, I basically did a lot of work with the South Carolina Economic Development Group out of Columbia when Stanford was president. And we were looking at that time when Joe Lee was on economic development of bringing 200 jobs down here to Beaufort County in a call center. I think everything was here that we were looking for, with one exception, and that was a labor force that was capable of putting a labor force together to handle the complexities of the job that we were going to give them. So the decision was that we could not do that at that time. That was back 2010. But one of the main things that I would be interested in knowing about this particular role is, how do we develop that workforce? How do we look forward? How do we bring technology into Beaufort County so that that workforce is ready for those kind of jobs that are coming in? There's a lot of talk about artificial intelligence. What does that mean? Who's going to be ready to handle it? And what does that do to the workforce that's currently here? There's a lot of estimates that are out there right now in terms of either job gain or job loss as artificial intelligence grows in each and every one of the roles, and including many of the businesses that would want to come here to Beaufort County. So a lot of that stuff is the interest and the things that I've been doing, again, like I said, over 35 plus years career in managing these things, managing P&Ls and all of the P&Ls, expenses, a $500 million P&L at Citibank. And we grew that company that I managed earlier, that I was talking about earlier. We grew that from 2 people, myself and another partner, to the 4,200 people that I was mentioning earlier. And we grew that from 0 revenue to about 900 million. And at one point we had a market valuation of 1.2 billion. So when you talk about growth and organization and leadership, I think that kind of sums it up with respect to how to do that and how we got it done. So that's my introduction. If there are any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer that.
Council, have any questions for Mr. Shelton, for Greg?
I think he covered it well. He presented nicely. Thank you, Greg.
You're
Yeah,
welcome.
thank you, Greg. That was great.
You're welcome.
Very good. Then.
Well, I do have one question for you, Joe.
Go.
So he's in a position now. He's a chairman of our Parks and Recreation.
Correct.
So he would have to resign from that board in order to sit on another board, correct?
Correct.
That is correct. Yes. Greg, you were aware of that, right?
I was aware of that, and that's one of the reasons why last year we named Lynn Daly as my co-chair. She's been doing a very good job on Parks and Recreation with all of the things that she's participated in. And it's kind of the second succession plan, if you will, in terms of getting someone ready to move into that position if and when I left.
Very good.
Gotcha.
Thank you. We have a second. Mary Beth, did you have something you wanted to add?
I just said thanking ahead.
Very good. We have a second applicant for that same position, and that's John Hazel. John, thank you again for joining us tonight. And hopefully we hear that first word, because I know you and I were the big strugglers to get our mics to work tonight.
Well, hopefully everybody can hear me. Good evening, everyone. As the mayor said, my name is John Hazel. I've been living in Beaufort, Port Royal for the last 4 years this time. I just retired in October from the Marine Corps after 23 years of active duty service. I've been around the country, been around the world, working with various international partners. I've been running motor pools. I've been the senior enlisted advisor for multiple companies in the Marine Corps. I've got experience running a motor pool and assisting running a company, Marine Corps companies, under a very small budget. Anybody that's been in the Marine Corps knows that we're always the last dog at the bowl. So we're used to running on short funds. I'm very active in the community. I'm currently going through Leadership Beaufort with Connie is there. I was doing the Beaufort Water Festival 2 years ago, and I was going to do it again this past year until COVID hit. My wife and I, we just bought our house here in Port Royal off of Savannah Highway. and we currently own our own business in the Shell Point Shopping Center called Devil Dog Headquarters. We've owned it for the last 2 years. We sell Marine Corps apparel that mainly provide clothing and gifts basically for the newly graduated Marines and the families that are coming to Beaufort. Since COVID happened, we are currently the only game in town. Core store went out of business, and we're the only place aside from the PX where people can get their Marine Corps apparel. We've had to come up with new and innovative ways to continue to keep our doors open since COVID hit. So I have no problem with coming up with new ways to make money. I've decided to put in my application for this position because I'm part of Port Royal. This is my home now, and I have a great desire to see Port Royal flourish while I live here.
John, we really appreciate you taking the opportunity, and welcome to permanently deciding to move to Port Royal, not just the Beaufort area.
Right.
We all believe it is a great place to live. That's why we're all here. And thank you for willing to take the time to do that. So questions for John?
No, I just want to thank both of the applicants, Greg and John, both. I know you both. I know know you're very both well qualified and would do a good job. And I know we've got a ton of opportunities with Port Royal. So if we've got to select one for this spot, and I hope that whoever doesn't get selected is still interested in doing some other things with the town. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
Well said, Jerry. That's exactly right. There will be a number of positions that are opening up this year. And please, if this one isn't the one, there'll be others. I mean, clearly, we're always looking for people willing to work in volunteer here in Port Royal. And thank you again for both of you. And John, thank you for your service, 23 years. In that aspect. Okay, council, we'll get back to our agenda. And I think it's let me switch here. We've got our council briefing.
We'll drop.
There we go.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Greg. Thanks, John.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Thank y'all.
Here.
All right, I will start, obviously, topping that list is stormwater. For the most part, the Cypress wetlands work has been completed. While we were sitting here, I did get an email from our consultant. He plans on being down here tomorrow to address some of the issues about getting some signage back in place, taking down some of the signages there, some of the barriers that have been put in place. And he's also pulling together the replanting team, which we anticipate being out there, I believe. Give me 1 second. I'll pull that email up while I'm sitting here. Planning crew is confirmed for February 22nd and 23rd. He needs a 10 to 12 foot boat to get him out there. So we'll get him there one way or the other. But like I said, he'll be down tomorrow to take care of some of the odds and ends that we've come across. Let's see. Now that we've completed a lot of the fence clearing near the Madrid pond, we'll be able to tie into electrical. We do have the aerator on order, so we're hoping to get that installed here shortly as well. Another topic, obviously, is we've talked about some potential property that we're looking into. We're close to having that wrapped up.
Then real quick, they did get the duck pond, right? The last council briefing, they had a problem with the piece of equipment to get it cleaned out, but they thought they had a way to do that. They met the depth they needed. I think you said they needed 12 feet somewhere.
Well, when we've got that machinery in there, it was a lot softer than we anticipated. Despite that, because of his operators and how good they are, they were able to still get some of it dug out. Maybe not exactly like we wanted, but we were able to add some volume and out to where the aerator is. And we have the aerator back up and functioning as well. I noticed it was off the other day, but Jeff went and checked the timer, and he just made some adjustments.
Very good. Thank you for that update.
Okay. The appraisal on that piece of property that we're looking at has pretty much, I think he's nearing completion. Linda and I gave him the background information. He needs some approximate sizes. We had to evaluate what the potential reuses would be based upon a zoning classification. That's been addressed. And obviously we had to consider scale, building footprint, height, and what sort of impact that would have on value. So we're close to wrapping that up. Old Fort, y'all are all aware of the ribbon cutting that's scheduled for February 12th. We're pretty excited about that. I think the mayor, I just dropped the bomb on you that you will be giving some comments, just to let you know. But that's going to be an exciting project for a number of reasons. And if you're ever in Linda's office, you'll note the board that Victor Dover created, and there was a reference to what we call this emerald necklace, this potential green development around the edges of the town. And one of the places that we anticipated that was here. This predates the sale of this property to the land trust, and its adjacency to the Fort Frederick ruins is a pretty exciting opportunity. And obviously we were able to get Old Fort resurfaced in conjunction with this project. So that's exciting as well. Any questions on that?
That will still be at 10 o'clock on Friday, correct?
Yes.
Next Friday.
Have you all drafted an agenda?
It's not my event. It's the county's ribbon cutting, but they've asked the mayor to speak.
Okay, all right.
So I'm sure we'll get a program shortly. I think it's probably just gonna be a schedule of speakers, that sort of thing.
Okay.
All right. CDBG, nothing new to report this time. I do have a virtual workshop that I will be attending. Will hopefully give me some ideas. I know the last time we talked, we thought about submitting a third application, and we had focused on kind of that Naval Heritage / Casablanca area. And so I'm looking for something that we can dovetail to accommodate that sort of census information and data. I've been looking at there's some prescribed things there, but I think there's some latitude. We did stormwater in Casablanca probably about 10 to 12 years ago as a CDBG. We did some resurfacing, we did some sidewalk work, but I think there's some other things we can probably do in terms of public facilities, parks. There may be some opportunities there to do something with the Casablanca Park. So I've just got to figure out how it's going to fit into what's allowed within the parameters of the community development block program. And to be quite honest with you, I'm hoping that we may see some additional funding to these sorts of programs, hopefully in the next year or so. Spanish Moss Trail, I include in your packets various scenarios of how this thing may proceed, some of the pros and cons. Realistically, we all know that the construction of the spine road is probably some ways off. And so we're trying to figure out some temporary solutions to make it as safe as possible for cyclists and users of the Spanish Moss Trail to get across Rebo Road. I did meet today with someone from Spanish Moss Trail to talk about some of these scenarios and how we kind of move this ball forward. So anybody got anything you want to add to that?
Van, can you do me a favor and check the upload on the scenario to our packet? I don't see that. Does anybody see that? It may not have uploaded. Just check that for us so that we can catch up on that later on.
All right, we'll do. Yeah, I'm looking at the file now. All right, let me go back.
That one may not have uploaded.
That's fine. All right, here we go.
It's okay.
All right.
On the CBDG one, where are we on timing on the Paris Avenue?
We have finished the scope, and we have signed all of the startup documents. So all of those things are in process. Just beyond the sign off, there are other things at the federal level that they have to agree to, and there's always tweaks that we end up having to do. And while we all hope that these are things that can be done in a year or so, they typically stretch out to 18 months. In conjunction with that, obviously we're looking at the pedestrian crossing adjacent to cypress wetlands and that sort of raised pedestrian safe passageway, if you will. And we want to incorporate that into these improvements also. And so we've got that all teed up engineering wise, but we've got to work in the other elements of that scope to work within the budget that we've created, which is, $750 and some change. And the reality is that there may be some things that we identified during the process of improving that stretch of road where we may decide that there's some additional funding we may want to add to whatever the eventual contract is that might be outside of the scope of the CDBG that we just want to get accomplished as well. So, that and something that you had asked me and I did include in the packets was the contract that we did sign for the upgrade of the lighting, which I think will also be included in this program as well. So we're pretty excited about that. And I think I gave you all the presentation on what the potential savings were as well. So all of those things will be worked in. Hopefully we'll get moving sooner than later on both of those, to be honest with you. So we'll see. I can't make any promises on the Fed stuff.
Understand that.
Yeah.
That. And the sewer CBDG is working through the same process, right? It's just
correct. Yeah. Just Grego support. I don't know if any of those guys are on tonight, but Linda and I met with them to review the first draft of that master plan. It's nearing completion. Obviously, there are some holes in it that we need to address as we work through them on a couple of potential redevelopment locations, if you will. But for the most part, as I mentioned in the briefing, it is very similar to the blueprint that we created initially. However, this gives some formality to how things may potentially lay out. And it also helps us really hopefully identify where that spine road would be located. Because I think I may mention this later in the briefing, but one of the things that obviously we've put in place, or hopefully we will put in place, is alternative funding to address the spine road, whether it's the impact fee program or a potential capital projects or sales tax list. I mean, that is the significant project that's in this port redevelopment from a public facility standpoint. And because it stretches from one end to almost the other, it's pretty integral to the redevelopment. And it also is significant in terms of its impact on the TIF. And I think I mentioned to y'all, and I'm probably covering this out of order, but it kind of segued nicely. I gave y'all some information relative to what we anticipate in collections in the TIF for the upcoming year based upon billing. And we ran through some scenarios where, you could be looking at a borrowing. In my opinion, that I think it's less than half of what we anticipated in that first phase, but it's still potentially worth pursuing if it makes sense. I may ask Lawrence to go back and run some numbers at a little bit higher the debt service payment to see what sort of funds could be generated to maybe expand the scope of what we could fund through that first borrowing. But we all know we're 7 years into a 20-year TIF without it being in place, and if we want to reset the clock, we're going to have to revisit the county and the school district to talk about those things. But if you pull the spine road out of it, you've got a completely different TIF, completely different scope, and some financial commitments that are significantly different. All right.
Is Gregos to tend to do a presentation to council on the plan, the master plan, once they finish it?
I think, yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great idea. That's something we can certainly do.
Yeah.
Right. Baynard Cove, obviously y'all are very familiar with this project. There was an issue about the connectivity of water and sewer from the adjacent neighborhood. We all know that all water and sewer infrastructure is owned by Beaufort Jasper. It is not owned by any private entity. They're addressing the easement issue from one property to the next. It hasn't caused all of the work to be stopped. I was out there late last week, and there was still heavy equipment out moving dirt around. So I think they're working to resolve that water and sewer question. So I'll keep you posted once I find out more about that. Traffic and road projects. We did submit the encroachment permit for the Waddell pedestrian crossing. They did come back with a couple of questions, but as you can see, what I provide you, it's a pretty comprehensive document, much more than I anticipated, but we want to make sure that we give everything that the DOT may need to address that. Most of you probably saw this is included in here, but the improvements to Pinckney Boulevard next to Naval Heritage Park. Thank the DOT when you see them. They did a great job. Very pleased with the outcome considering what the previous condition of the road was. We kind of touched on the Spanish Moss Trail a little bit earlier, but I think we all know that, you know, what started out as an evaluation of how we get Spanish Moss Trail across Riverboat Road has evolved in kind of to a larger discussion. When I met with Jennifer Beal, who is the engineer hired by the county to, you know, look at that, we, using the tool study and the accident information that the chief provided her, she really identified 2 areas of significant concern that maybe we need to address sooner than later. And obviously one is the left-hand movement out of Parkers. The number of accidents and the severity of accidents there is significant. And she is concerned and states that we really need to do something about that. And the other end is obviously near Lenora and that stretch of or Rebo Road and the turn movements there. And she's got some ideas for things that we can do that mirror what we anticipated doing with the tool plan. Those are a couple of things that we really should be looking short term to hopefully reduce the accident frequency that we're seeing in those 2 particular areas. She's befuddled about the left-hand movement out of Parkers onto Rebo Road, particularly considering how close the signal is there. And so hopefully we'll be able to address that sooner than later. All right. Porter's Chapel, they request for reimbursement through the accommodation tax is moving forward. I spoke with someone from the finance department to ask me questions about total cost versus what we've requested. You know, obviously we spent more than the $240,000. But it's actually worsened our favor because it shows a financial commitment above and beyond the request, and how we wanted to make sure that this project was completed. So I don't have a definitive answer right yet, but I think it's been well received and will continue to be well received. It is deemed a part of the larger reconstruction scope of projects, and so hopefully all those will move forward as well. We just did this as a standalone just because of where we were and having everything ready and prepared for submittal. And it had been sent prior, and this was just kind of updated to get into this new funding cycle.
Did we determine a name for Porter's Chapel?
Yeah, y'all, I believe, have decided that it should be the Pinckney Porter Chapel.
Okay.
Yes, we discussed that, yes.
Yeah, so we will be doing the signage and getting the landscaping squared away so that we can do an event to formally open the facility. Yesterday, I actually spoke to Professor Landrum's class that is undertaking this effort with the town and the National Park Service, kind of giving them our perspective and the background of how we arrived at this location and kind of some of the history of Porter's Chapel. And I think what the result is going to be pretty they're going to produce much of the display work that we will be incorporating into the interior of this building. You know, and it's a great opportunity for those students because they will have access and be working with National Park Service personnel and the contractors involved that help produce what you see nationally at other facilities. It's a good door opener for them, and at the same time we're getting top-notch quality work that's getting assistance from the National Park Service. Okay.
Thank you.
No problem.
Make sure you thank Professor Landry for keeping that moving, because I know he got stalled with the whole COVID, and I'm glad he brought that class back, and he's trying to make that happen.
Absolutely, absolutely. Naval Hospital Sidewalk National Park, I guess, fence relocation. Mayor DeVito and I did meet with a member of Congressperson Mace's staff a few weeks ago, brought this up again. They're going to look into it. We talked about our frustrations of trying to get this accomplished. We don't want to do the work at midnight while nobody's looking. We want it done the right way. We really want to get that sidewalk done. It's important. It's frustrating for me every time I drive by it and see that gap. And with the opportunities that we may have to improve the Naval Heritage Park, as the county looks at recreation impact fees, and we have sent them what we consider a good scope to upgrade, not only the skate park portion of the Naval Heritage Park, but the parking, the paths, and the potential incorporation of other elements within the Naval Heritage Park. I think it's absolutely essential that we complete this piece of the sidewalk that will really open up the access to this park in a safe way. You see people walking that fence line all the time, but if we're able to get that sidewalk done, people can cross the bridge, come into town, park there, and take advantage of some additional exercise opportunities that we're hoping to move into the park as well.
Yeah, the meeting went well. It was actually hosted by the Beaufort Chamber of Commerce. We thank them very much for hosting that with Mesa's staff. And the meeting went real well, and we've shared some documents with them so that they know what's happened and who we've been in contact with in the past. Van's been working with that staff to see if we can't get this moving along. It is just so frustrating because everything's just gets stalled somewhere in that big box called the federal government.
Yeah. As I alluded to earlier, I gave y'all a copy of the LED streetlight conversion contract that we did sign with Dominion. It gives you a summarization of what the potential savings are. But for me, it's all about light pollution as well. I think the new fixtures are going to be much more effective in terms of how they direct light and don't have an impact on the adjacent property owners. We're all familiar with those folks that might use BB guns to shoot out the lights, and we're hoping that will stop if we can address it through improved lighting. We're waiting to see how the schedule works out. This is obviously a statewide initiative, but that's one of the reasons why I signed this contract back in October, so that we could get closer to the top of the list. So as soon as I find out a date for that to happen, I will let you know.
Van, I do want to, the lighting, the LED program came up. Well, if you remember back a couple of months ago, I mentioned that Van and I had a meeting with Dominion about what I call utility pollution. Also the extra poles, the extra power lighting poles, however you want to do that. I have noticed that those poles are starting to come down. Dominion is doing what they said they would do. It is not their issue. It is an issue of the communication world, not transferring the wires to the new pole. And that's only when Dominion can take the old pole down. They have been pushing the communication world to transfer the wires so that the poles can be removed. I've started to notice some of them coming down. There's a lot more to go in our town, and we'll give them an opportunity to do that. But it's not fair to a property owner to have an old pole and a new pole sitting at the corner of their property, and in some cases, 3 poles sitting at the corner of their property. So we're working with them, and they're doing what they said they would do. And I just wanted to pass that on because I noticed over the last 2 weeks or 3 weeks that there are some missing now.
Good. Next item, local option sales tax. We have a mayor's managers meeting, I believe in a week or so, a couple weeks. I can't remember the specific date. And I'm sure this is going to be a topic of interest and how it potentially may move forward. I wish I had some better information as to what the timelines were, but I don't. I just wanted to keep it in front of y'all in case you run into any of your county council members. You just please bring that up again. Smilax Ron Road, no real updates, other than our concern that we want to make sure that there's a egress ingress for the residents adjacent to both the end of Smilax and Ron Road, and that we have some sort of plan for how all of that will play out to make sure that they have access. I think it's very doable. Obviously, with the path, Spanish Moss Trail, and how right now it exits near the end of Smilax, I would really like to see a hard surface between the end of that trail and Smilax. If we are going to pursue a temporary solution until we can resolve a Smilax issue, Spine Road issue, I think we've got to bridge that gap between the 2 hard surfaces. I'm just going to move on to the retreat. I think, Brooke, you had mentioned maybe some, I believe it was March 20th and 27th or 13th and 20th?
The 20th and 27th as possible dates for us.
Yeah, if y'all could look at your calendars and see if those are dates that may work for you. That way we can schedule it. We can address any topics that you might forward to us. And I wanted to confirm that y'all like the idea of having kind of a third party facilitator to kind of organize the event and get everybody pointed in the right direction.
I like the 27th. I like a facilitator.
I'm okay with either.
I like the 27th and the facilitator.
That's fine. Well, I'll make the dates work.
All right. Like I said, if there are specific topics you want us to cover, please go ahead and forward them to me so I can do whatever background research I need to do. And then the final is, obviously we've got some changing employee status here in Port Royal. I think I have the inspector position squared away. Found an individual that has, not only is he a certified building inspector who can do commercial and in single family inspection, but he's also got a background in architecture, and he has the ability to do site plan review. So I think he's going to offer us a set of skills that will kind of expand what we typically do and will allow us to maybe reduce some of the third-party professional fees that we've been incurring the last few years. So that's pretty exciting. Obviously, one of the larger concerns we have has to do with the planning department, and we're hoping to address that shortly. I currently have ads running in national publications and statewide publications, so I am getting interest there. So that's pretty exciting also. So those are some of the larger things we're dealing with, and then obviously with Tony 98% retiring, I still am able to sneak in the occasional email to him and get a response. I think with some changes in the current employee makeup, hopefully we'll be able to fill some of the shoes by Tony locally, if you will, and allow us to maybe save some money in different ways. So that's all I've got. But a couple other things. The vaccine center has been relocated to the Port Royal Medical Center, if you will, right across the street from the police department, right on Rebo Road. And for those of you that weren't aware, the governor has now opened up vaccinations for those 65 to 69, in addition to where he was on the 70 plus.
That's effective Monday.
Effective Monday. Yeah. So, but the vaccine center is open and it is busy. I passed it this morning. I'm sure, Jerry, you may have seen it also. But the parking lot was full, so people are getting vaccinated.
Chief Beach, any traffic, any concerns? Or is that being monitored at all by the sheriff's department, or is that something you're handling in-house right now? Or there's
No, sir. It's in-house and there's no traffic issues. I went by a few times today and parking lot's full, but there's no traffic issues.
Very good. And Linda, we're not going to ask you to say anything tonight, but certainly that is sad news, and we'll talk again in the future.
And thanks for your help over on Indigo Woods. I think we did a little touch up over there. Thank you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Council, questions for Van about any of the items he's updated or anything else that you need some clarification on?
Did we have a date for Porter's Chapel, or we thinking spring, or it's kind of up in the air at this point as far as a ribbon cutting? Have we discussed that?
No, we haven't yet. I know we had talked about, waiting until things were a little safer.
Right.
But, I think, maybe late spring, I think it's fair.
That's
I think
fine.
that, that gives us time to get the sign installed and a couple other things done over there.
And just for the record, I think I mentioned this last time, I will not be in attendance at the Old Fort Project ribbon cutting on February the 12th.
Okay.
Right.
You did, and we understand that. Van, I think there's There's a couple of legal issues out there that I think maybe an executive session. I know that Jerry can't be here next week also. That's correct, right? So not next week, but the following meeting, maybe an executive session to do a legal briefing would be appropriate.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I may have some clarification on a couple of those by then as well.
Good, that'd be great. Because Jerry, I'm correct on your next Tuesday, right? And I don't want to do that without him. So please, let's wait for the following month, whether it's workshop or council meeting, but let's do that to do a legal briefing. We probably need to do that quarterly whenever we have these kind of cases out there, just so that we all know what's happening with those.
What time, excuse me, Joe, what time is the thing for Oak Fort?
10 o'clock.
10 a.m.
10 o'clock?
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yes.
The next item on our agenda is review of the next week's council meeting. And Van, would you like to go through that real quick? And any questions from council on what Van's put on the agenda?
All right. Yeah, real quickly, obviously, we're going to address the two emergency ordinances. One is obviously the face coverings or masks, if you will, for another 30-day potential renewal or until the next council meeting. And the other is the authorization to allow for virtual meetings for another 30+ day period to make sure that we have that as an option, depending on how the numbers look. I know things are starting to trend a little bit better, but obviously we're still, particularly with the variants that they're seeing, that could be of some concern. So we just wanted to make sure we kept that as an option.
Carol, go ahead.
No, I was just saying it's either I'm getting older or time certainly is moving fast, because 30 days seems to just roll around so quickly.
Yeah, we had committed to doing them every 30 days with everything that's happening. I'm sure that we could entertain if anybody wants to expend that out. So it's not every month. Just, think about that. You could make a motion at next month's meeting. We can leave it the way it is. We've kind of gotten used to it, but you're right. It goes by so fast.
So fast, yeah.
So, and we do have, so we'll leave that at that. We'll move on.
All right, then first readings, we will have a sidewalk ordinance, if you will, a pretty significant section, 250 feet on 12th Street. And it is compliance, obviously, with the sidewalk construction program. It's been a little while since we had one of these, so we're pretty excited about moving that one forward. And Brooke, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe we do not need to do the safe workplace resolution, or we do?
We do not. We are in compliance with the time frame and for the council members that are on at this time.
Wonderful.
So we're going to remove that item?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
All right, and then under council action, you have a number of appointments: Economic Development Board, Municipal Election Commission. You have a reappointment to the Metro Planning Commission. We have one for the Historic Preservation Commission and one for the Design Review Board Commission. So there are tons of opportunities for people to get involved with the town through these participation and these commissions and boards.
Can we, Brooke, can you adjust the agenda a little bit to show the two that we have applicants for, and then show the other ones that we do not have applicants for, just so that it's clear to people what we're going to be doing next week?
Yes, sir.
Because I am correct. We obviously don't have applicants for the Metro Historic. Right. So I'd like to show them separately that we're still looking for them, but let's keep them on the agenda so we can talk about it. So maybe we can spark some interest in the community. Van, I think you had somebody who's looking at the Metro, the MPC, the Metropolitan Planning Commission.
Yes.
Yeah. Well,
yes. And they wanted to talk with Linda and myself this week to kind of get an idea of what the commitments would be.
Yeah, and obviously, if they want to talk to any of the council members or myself, please let them know they can reach out to any of us about that. And they want to know what it really is like, they can certainly talk to me, because I sat on it for 20 years. So we can make that happen as well. And it's one that's close to my heart.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, well, let's do that. So we will be doing the two appointments from the interviews we had tonight next week.
And then the second item, or the B item, is approval of intergovernmental agreement with Beaufort County on Old Fort. And this just formalizes the relationship as to maintenance at the new park. You know, we've taken on more or less the landscaping piece of it, some of the minor stuff. And obviously their commitment is to make sure that the facility stays, you know, the larger items relative to some of the vertical things that have been constructed there. So this is just what we agreed to do. And obviously we've incorporated that into the RFP for landscape maintenance. And that was something I didn't touch on during the briefing, but I meant to. Josh Tiller and Tony are looking at that RFP to get more specific in some of those elements of the RFP that we saw a pretty wide discrepancy in pricing, hoping to maybe get more specific so there's some uniformity and maybe the expectations are all the same as people look at it again. All right. And then important information dates. Tuesday the 9th at 5:30 is the Parks and Recreation meeting. Wednesday the 10th is obviously our regular council meeting. Friday the 12th is the opening of the Fort Frederick Park off of Old Fort. And then on Tuesday, February 16th at 4:30 p.m. is the Redevelopment Commission.
Council.
And we have both. Yeah.
Go
And
ahead.
I neglected to recognize if either chief has anything they would like to bring up or say or talk about. I apologize.
We're getting the shake nose from both our chiefs.
That's fine.
Thank you for the recognition, though, Van. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Council have any questions for Van about the agenda or any items they need to see on or off?
Nothing in regards to the agenda.
All right, hearing none, we'll move that agenda along. And Brooke, thank you again for those hyperlinks. It makes it very easy to get to the documents and read through them. So we've gone through our important dates. We've reviewed our agenda. Is there anything for the good of the workshop tonight that anybody would like to pass on?
No, sir. I'm going to zoom in next week from my location. I'll just keep my fingers crossed. Hopefully it works down there.
Very good.
I have a question for Linda. Hi, Linda. How are you?
Hello.
The tiny house at Fort Frederick, formerly Mobile Home Park, is that a new zoning area out there for a tiny house development or something?
Oh, you've caught me off guard. I haven't been down there, so I'm not certain.
There's a brand new tiny house that's sitting out there on the water on the Mobile Home
In
Park.
front of the mayor,
Yeah,
right in front of the mayor's house.
directly in front of it.
Okay.
Yep.
I'll take a look.
Okay.
I did ask what they were doing, but he said he wasn't sure yet. It's a lot to put something down there. You don't know what you're doing.
And particularly the location.
Yeah, perfect.
Must have been after Christmas because Santa Claus did not see it at Christmas.
No,
It
it just happened in the last week and a half,
Yes.
maybe.
Okay.
It was last week, actually.
Yeah, I was going to say
Okay.
it's got to be the less than 10 days because I was out
And
there.
it's a tiny house.
Yes.
All right.
Okay.
Hearing nothing else, we'll go ahead and adjourn. Thank you, everybody,
you.
for your time and energy tonight.
Okay.
Kevin was too quiet tonight.
Kevin was quiet tonight.
Just taking it in, just taking it in.
And Jerry, travel safely, sir.
Travel safe.
We'll see
Yes.
you in a couple weeks.
Think about us while you're gone. Have fun.
Thank you.
Take me with you.
All right, bye.